Welcome to this week's First Minister's Questions Review. The usual suspects are present and correct. Phil Attridge, Alex Grant, Laurie Stewart and myself, Stuart Lockett. Well done today. Well, how do we... Was it an average or above average? Phil?
Average.
Average.
Yeah. He waffled on a bit, got to the point, but he needs a whetstone. He needs to put an edge on. You know, he needs to finish the debate a wee bit more. The usual from Joanna, a long monologue, and then we hit Europe again.
He needs, which is kind of the point you made, Alex. He needs a succinct, simple answer to the question about the night. Well, what Joanna asked was, could she have the actual figures that represented the 9.3% that we received from London against the 9.9% that we had paid to London? And the figure is different. I mean, the 9.3% is 64 billion, the 9.3 is 56 billion, because there's borrowing involved.
But he never really explained that.
He tried.
He needs that one sentence that goes boom, 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 boom. Now sit down and shut up. What he did was he waffled.
Yeah, but the problem
Nothing he
is,
said was inaccurate.
yeah, the problem is with this Norrie though, and it's a common problem in a debate of that sort. It is very easy to use the simple figures to try and mislead the listener into believing that you've got it right, when to explain what the simple figures infer is by definition more complicated. So it was easy for her to say, you think 9.3 is bigger than 9.9 is bigger than 9.3, when actually you're talking about apples and pears. You're a liar. That's what she tried to say. In order to respond to that, he has to explain the detail. That's the problem.
I don't think Joanne actually did very well with her second question or her third question, whichever she was trying to lead it up to. Yeah. She tried to say, well, yes, it's apples and pears. It's 9.3% of bigger figure than 9.9% is of a smaller figure.
Well, the figures out you're using were quite tight, which is, you know, if you actually listen to what she's saying, and it's hopefully not look at her, and just listen to what she's saying, this whole bit about spraying figures like a machine gun. Well, sorry, he wasn't. That was the whole point. He wasn't giving you the figures on actual borrowing. So he wasn't spraying. So the whole point is, she just reads off that sheet, irrespective of what he said.
She doesn't even, I bet she doesn't even
understand it. Hasn't got
but the truth is, and I've said this many times to you guys, I don't know if I've said it in this forum, but the fact is, if Gordon McIntyre Kemp or Ivan McKee of Business for Scotland had been answering that point, they'd have slaughtered her completely. Yeah. I actually think I could have answered it better, because I would have said, look, you are comparing two different baselines, but that's because of the size of the debt. The important fact is, the simple statistics are, not only have we been 11 billion short-changed in the last 4 years, we've been 80 billion short-changed in the last 30 years. The facts are there. He never uses the 30-year statistics. What you should say is, our deficit is less than their deficit, but by definition, we have been subsidising the rest of the UK. If you're actually trying to suggest that is not true, tell me now. Have we been subsidising the UK or not? Because that's the fact.
I mean, she
couldn't answer that.
She didn't have a very strong case this week. She wasn't very well briefed, because but by the time her second question came up, she was repeating the lie about Swinney giving a different report in private.
She doesn't get briefed. She's just given a spiel.
She gets a script. She gets a script.
It reminds me as well.
I'm sorry, it's working because it's muddying the waters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because nobody will believe that somebody that stupid.
And she gets reported every week. Whatever she says gets reported every week in
But the SNP need a new slogan. They need to find a way to simply explain. And if it is, we've got less debt than the UK, and that debt will be less forever and a day.
But it's not just that, it's the whole way.
I mean, I'm not going to claim I'm smarter than them, but somebody needs to come up with that short, succinct,
I'll tell you,
irrefutable statement.
I'll tell you what it is. Scotland has been subsidising the UK for 30 years and more. The only reason why we can't quote more is because the Treasury will not make the statistics available for that previous period. And let me tell you now, if the Treasury actually could say that the opposite was the case, they would be publishing the statistics. They're not. Scotland subsidises the UK. End of.
Ask Dennis Healy.
Yeah, but I did.
Yeah, I know, but there's plenty of people. There are loads of people around there that have been around for the last 30 to 40 years, that have been in government, that dealt with it, that would automatically be part of the No campaign, that know it's lies.
So the real push should be just that.
Yeah, it should. But the other thing I'd like to say...
We don't want to subsidise London anymore.
No, exactly. Now, that's a very good line. I agree with that 100%. But to me, apropos your first question, it was relatively mediocre, and I think this could have been exploited better. None of them tried to follow up on this bullshit line that says the reason why the Treasury's had to come out and say we will stand behind the total UK debt is because Scotland's weak, whatever it might be. The reason they had to do that is because they won't negotiate, and the markets are actually saying, hang on, we need some certainty here. He should have stood up at some point and said, what, does nobody want to actually ask me about the fact that
he got asked the question.
What?
Ken Gibson asked it.
Mm-hmm.
Aye,
okay.
He didn't
do a killer on it. That's right. No, you're right. He did. I forgot about that. But he should have done a killer punch on it and said, "I'm surprised none of you. Why didn't you ask me that question, Mrs. Lamont? If you actually think that was important, you didn't ask it either. You know, you sent the bloody ginger rodent in to make this announcement on a Sunday night."
The other thing, it won't get reported in the press, but Joanna Lamont asking the question, and it's answered in the white paper.
Yeah.
She's actually quoting the pages that give the figures.
So she's asking for
She
an answer.
wasn't smart enough or articulate enough to use those figures effectively.
She should have come up with her own answer, which she didn't.
No, she did. She did eventually.
She did. Look, what she was trying to say was actually bullshit. But what she said was, if you recall, even we Waynes in the school know that 9.3 isn't smaller than 9.9 if you're talking about a different base, and you have obfuscated by comparing these two different things. You're a liar. That's what she tried to say. And the job of the opposition is to leave that as the residual message if you can do it, because there isn't a different set of statistics that proves Scotland is being subsidised by England, because they're not. Fact. So she doesn't have an alternative.
Looking at it overall, he refuted the usual charge about EU entry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that whole bit as well.
He highlighted that the Better Together campaign, that when Salmon quotes people, he quotes people that are so-called Better Together
Jim
supporters.
Yeah.
Ruth Davidson got censured.
Yeah.
For a lie.
Not yet, but she carried on.
Her position was that had already been ruled on and it was acceptable.
Yeah, I don't know if that was true.
So that might be a Presiding Officer.
And it's possibly that point of order that Neil Finlay was bringing up when the broadcast ended. I mean, that does annoy, isn't it, when it switches over to a London political programme, when there are key issues.
Listen, just take your colonial position and be glad of it.
Exactly.
Well, if you remember Tony Blair's opinion of the Scottish Parliament it was not much more than a jumped-up parish council.
Of course, but what about
which we don't have in Scotland, by the way.
We really, you know, I mean, and that whole bit when he says that the way that these bleeding heart false liberals start ranting about why wasn't somebody prosecuted? Yeah, so they're looking at a way to get them prosecuted. Why are you doing that? I mean, they really are just...
I haven't been best impressed with Kenny.
No, I
think...
Me neither. I find he's been far too authoritarian, too quickly been absorbed into the elite.
Well, if you actually have a look at the sectarian. While again it was well intentioned, it should have been a lot more consultation. I mean, it's a bloody disaster.
Actually, hang on a minute. It was forecast to be a bloody disaster, but it hasn't
carried on.
No, it hasn't been a bloody disaster. But the truth is, I agree with you, and I think most people would agree with you that the legislation was rushed into. One does get the impression that from the Justice Department, I think somebody should say to McCaskill, you need to, it's all very well to appear to be decisive, but on contentious issues, you need to be much more inclusive.
But can I just make a point there, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah, with that legislation, right? Because it hasn't been a disaster now, right? That's one thing. But the whole point is it's flawed, and our
Agreed.
police service has just been regiized. And we've seen what they do. They think of nothing to do with common sense and how things are working in consensus. If you have a look at it,
Phil, but yours is a rant.
no, if they just start
You're
in
not
on
right.
that,
You're not right.
Right.
What's your point?
I just wonder if it's not actually tactical with McCaskill, because he does it all the time. He goes, right, there you are, there's the legislation, fight amongst yourselves, but that's what I want. The law being the law moves very, very slowly, and maybe it's the tactic to be controversial to get a decision. He might not want complete, to get rid of corroboration completely, but it might end up having the sort of pillars of the law deciding, right, okay, we'll let it go for domestic abuse, sex attacks, etc. So there'll be an area of the law that it's really aimed at.
Yeah, but I
Wait
don't.
a minute, I want to cover Phil's point too, because Phil's, although he's ranting a bit, but he was right. I mean, I've had that view of Kenny McCaskill as Justice Secretary right since the start in 2007. He's authoritarian. He reminds me of Jim Callaghan when he was Home Secretary in the 70s. It came as a shock to discover that a Labour government could bring in all kinds of legislation. It was,
did you know, look at the last one. Good.
But what is interesting is at least Willie Rennie, to be against the centralisation of services and against, you could say, any authoritarian changes in the justice system, is at least sticking to a traditional Liberal agenda.
Yeah, but it's inconsistent with what the Liberal Party are doing in Westminster. It's bullshit. Look, I agree with you up to a point, Stuart, but the Liberals have not behaved in a Liberal fashion in coalition, in my opinion. It's complete crap. All they're doing is point scoring here. I mean, the only policy they had going into the election was, we don't want the centralisation of the police. Now, that might be right, but they didn't have any other policy. That was what they said. So, you know, I think the important thing here is I think we're all agreed that Kenny McCaskill, at the very least, could be managing these issues in a way that didn't offer own goals.
Yeah, it could be managing them all that.
I'm not entirely sure it does. I mean, I have a view here that it might be the only way to get things moving, is to be controversial, to force judges, which is the case here where the guy who actually did the research has said, right, get rid of corroboration, and the other two have said no.
It's that thing.
Only country in the world that's got it.
People think corroboration. Oh well, if there's no witness, you can't do them, which is pretty well rubbish because you have evidence. You have other evidence.
I don't think we.
Corroboration is what we use in the Sharia.
5 minutes talking about corroboration every time we meet.
No, exactly.
The listeners and viewers will be bored with that. I'd like to point out that we did in fact get through quite a few backbenchers. Even our favourite Patrick Harvey got in at 32 minutes. You know, they don't normally run at over 30 minutes, but at 32 minutes, Patrick Harvey was asked to stand up and give his question.
Thought Kenny McIntosh got a good skill.
Kenny McIntosh, they're still looking for this is a question of EU students, and so we were EU into student fees.
Well, I have a problem with this. They have no right to ask questions about the EU until they agree that we're going to be in the EU.
Well,
Or they have every right to ask any questions they want about the EU when they agree we're going to be in the EU.
I thought Alex Johnson was quite clever, and he actually outlined the Tory position completely, which is they're pro-nuclear, pro-unconventional gas fracking, anti-renewables, especially in the shape of onshore wind turbines. And he pulled it all together into one.
He did
one sentence.
But he did. And you're absolutely right. And I think that's.
And he said, "Are you going to use the planning system to continue to support wind turbines, but to stop nuclear and fracking?"
Well, exactly. But I think this was an opportunity, as we discussed before we came on air, as it were, that when the First Minister answers those questions, he's got to do more than answer them. He's got to say, we're taking a very careful view and looking at the scientific detail of fracking. However, what you've just told us, and use the points you just made, you've just told us that he did mention Lord Howell's comment about, you know, the wastelands of the north east, which is quite good.
That might make the papers tomorrow.
Well, it might, but what he's got to say is this is typical of the Tory party. You accuse us acting in a responsible manner, not pushing things through, when your leader down south is basically because his party is connected to all sorts of commercial concerns and want to make money out of fracking by bribing local communities who are in great difficulty because of the policies you put in place to try and make money out of fracking. In other words, possibly put their environment at risk in order to defend themselves. You know, there's a real attack there, and the Conservative, by definition of describing what Tory policy was, gave him a huge opportunity for attack. He only took a wee bit of it. I think he should take more of it.
But what Alex Johnson, of course, was trying to clarify was that the Scottish Government will use the planning process.
Yeah, to block
new nuclear.
He was attempting a, oh no, we don't want fracking, because that, I mean, the SNP don't really have a policy on it.
No, and that's what, but that's what, you see, the interesting point was the Tories were saying, by definition, we think fracking's a good idea, my leader told me so, you're going to try and block it by nasty means. And then Patrick Harvey stood up and said, hang on a minute, we shouldn't be doing fracking at all. Would you like to support that? Would the SNP like to say that fracking is dangerous? And so, if I was a journalist writing about this, I might actually say, the SNP are just
on the back burner.
They're obfuscating a bit here because they're saying we're not supporting it the way the Tories are, but we're not barring it either. Although the logical position is we're going to get into the scientific bit.
But he did say that, as he said, a country that's so rich in other energy sources doesn't need to disturb. Especially in the Central Belt, because in the areas where they want to. We're going all the way back to Dart, the company Dart that holds the licenses. It's unconventional gas, it's not fracking. It's in the area between Falkirk and Stirling. It's a very
methane.
But it's been shelved.
Well, it's been pushed into the back burner. But the company, don't forget, the company that owns it, the guy who runs the company that owns Dart, is the man who gave £500,000 to the Better Together campaign, who also gave money to Arkan,
but he should have said
Bosnian.
But you see, that's the point about First Minister's question, Stuart. There was a great opportunity there to take a question and use it to attack them on something else, i.e., this is bribery and corruption from a nasty source. Oh, by the way, he's a major banker.
And by the way, that must have been it must have been lodged 2 or 3 days ago, that question. So the Scottish Government should have been able to prepare for that.
Yeah, but also Simon's positioning himself where he doesn't want to be accused of that.
No, but the question that was asked is, it says, well, they have passed legislation. Legislation is there to help a government to govern, and that's exactly what the SNP are doing. They're governing as regards what they're going to do with fracking, but they're keeping their options open.
They've introduced new planning legislation.
Yeah, I know, but what they've got to say
they're using it. That's what legislation is for, to govern.
Unlike your party, we have no vested interests in pushing this thing forward, potentially at the cost of the environment. And by the way, your major backer in the Better Together campaign is one of the leading exponents on it. Blah de blah de blah.
Before you go for your
and you got double hit.
I want to mention Jenny Mara.
Not
because of her question, but because Alex got up and went,
yes,
da-da-da-da,
and
sat down.
Very
which is
good.
what you should do all the time.
Very good. I thought that was
And it comes on. Yeah, because...
very good. Right then, gentlemen. I think we need to move into the scoring section, so that we have to get the George Dawes, the man who does the scores.
Phil.
Let's start off at the top. Okay, he did go on a bit. He did hit them, so yeah, I'll give him a 7. And Joanne, well, some of the things, machine guns, reading off that whole bit. I mean, sorry, if I was listening, it might sound better, but I'm looking and it looks horrible. So 5. Tory, no, 3. Willie, nothing.
She should get a minus anyway for being censured, you know?
Yeah.
Point out for being censured.
Well, I'll give her 3 because
that's
at
good.
least she's got the cojones to actually go
Presiding
for it.
Officer.
Presiding Officer, she should have been a bit stricter on that. I'll give her a 5 as well.
Sure.
Alex is back up to more or less his typical self. I think give him a typical 8, well, shall we say. It wasn't his best performance, but I don't think he was outwitted at all. There's nothing, he can't stop Joanne Lamont getting her sound bites in, her quotes in, that will be in the paper. She did get, I think she had a very poor performance today. I'll just give her 3 because it's, she made her points. They will be printed, we will hear about them in the media, points. But nothing there.
At one point she really did as well.
Ruth Davidson, I'm going to take my point off. I was going to give her 3, but she's having a point off for basically getting caught out with the presiding officer lying, accusing the First Minister of lying. And instead of taking the censure, this is the problem with the presiding officer, that she doesn't double censure. Oh, you shouldn't be questioning my authority.
Take her down, contempt.
Yeah, but I think she was I just wonder if she cocked it up. And I think she probably wondered herself whether she'd cocked it up.
Anyway.
So she wasn't going to go for a
She
second
certainly. So anyway, she didn't double censure. Ruth, so she gets 2, basically. Willie's sticking to his liberal ideals, I suppose, and his anti-centralisation, his anti-authority thing. I've got to give him 3 for everything.
It's all completely out of pish.
The rest of the backbenchers, I thought, the presiding officer we'd only have got a 5 and a -1 for her not double censuring normally, but she did let a lot of backbenchers ask questions all the way through to Patrick Harvey running 2 minutes over the normal 30 minutes, so I'm going to give her 6.
Alex?
Give Alex 7 because I think, as we discussed, I think I wish I was that good, but he is generally so good. I think he should use the opportunity in some of the ways we discussed. So, but I'll stick with 7.
Needs a nice.
Joan Lamont, I'll give her 3 because I agree with the general. I mean, she was reading from a script. Somebody had told her, "You've got something here to go for a killer blow with," and I think Alex could have been harder in responding to her, but if in a debate about that, she'd have been absolutely crucified. So she's worth a 3. Ruth Davison is pretty similar. I give her a 3. I give Willie Rennie 4 because I think, as Stuart said, he's pursuing a consistent route on centralisation. It may be totally hypocritical compared to what his pals down at Westminster are doing, but I think we've got to try and contextualise this to the Scottish Parliament. So I give him 4. I give the presiding officer 5. Yeah.
I find it hard to be impartial.
Alex, I'm going to give him a 6. I'm marking him down. I wasn't very impressed at all, even though he did answer one question in a much more succinct manner. Joanne, I'm going to give her 3 because the question
was already answered.
Although it's an old chestnut, it is one that sows confusion. FUD, which is her job at the moment.
Yeah.
Ruth, I'm going to give a 3 to because I quite liked the way she recovered. Was not adjacent to the truth.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Willie, I'm going to give Willie a 4, much the same idea, although there are no liberal principles anymore, he's at least pretending that he's resurrected them.
Yeah.
The presiding officer, I'm going to give her a 5 because I think she made a mistake. I'm pretty sure that we'll find Ruth Davison was right, that the censure wasn't correct, that it had been deemed acceptable.
Well, what was it she actually said?
She called him a liar.
She didn't use the word liar, did she?
I think she did.
She lied. Well, she can never have been approved for saying lie.
What did they add up to?
Alex is on 28. 9-14 for Joanne. Ruth gets a healthy 11. Willie gets 11 as well. Presiding officer 21. So Alex way ahead, twice as good as everybody else. That's quite a low score for Joanne actually, 14. She's been doing better recently. Ruth did all right.
Well, she needs to start being a bit. It's not because it's that eyes glued. It's the presentation. Which is like Dougie said to me, "Well, listen to it on the radio then."
I watched her.
That's a good point.
On Border TV, saying that she would
Stand on a platform with the Tories,
Yeah.
unlike Jim Murphy.
So, and she came across Much better.
Yeah, but she wasn't getting asked the difficult questions.
She got asked a couple of difficult questions.
Well,
But
only
she's
one-
not got a script.
No,
But
the
she
only one.
waffled effectively.
Well, the only one I saw was, are you going to stand on a platform with the Tories? Yeah, I totally disagree with the Tories, but I don't on the union, therefore I'll
the
stand with them.
difficult one for her was the universal benefit ones right at the start.
Oh, I didn't see that. I've only seen a bit.
Right.
I only saw a clip.
Right at the
Well,
start, yeah.
Sounds like that was a good debate then. Gentlemen, thank you very much again for turning up and discussing the First Minister's questions from Holyrood. Hope to see you all again next week. Thank you.
Aye, after you've had your bum felt.